For most of my life, I've given little thought to soil. To me, it was a flat surface that I walked on. I've been thinking a lot more about it these days, and what I learned has surprised me. I learned that soil is like the Earth's skin that lies between the sky and its rock core. It's where plants keep a tenuous grip with their roots as they harvest the sun's energy with their leaves. I began to realize that soil is alive, and that a handful of good soil contains more living things than all the human beings that were ever born. It dawned on me that without soil, life as we know it would not exist. If soil is alive, I wondered if a soil could die. I visited with Pam Thomas and spoke to her about this.
A recent historical example is the Dust Bowl. In the early part of the 1900s, homesteaders plowed up millions of acres of prairie lands in order to plant crops, mostly wheat, because wheat was bringing very high prices during the World War I wheat boom. Well, because of this intensive cultivation, the delicate balance, the ecosystem was essentially destroyed. You know, you had the plants, the animals, and the microorganisms, to the point that where the soils were no longer able to function. So as the wet years of the 20s gave way to the drought of the 30s, the soil, which no longer had the natural anchors to keep the soil in place, became very susceptible to wind erosion.
In fact, in the 1930s, dust storms would start in the Great Plains and would move cross-country to places like Boston and D.C. Meanwhile, in the southern U.S. Piedmont, plowing and monoculture crops destroyed soil, causing massive gully erosion. Some of these gullies are still visible today. No wonder FDR said that the nation that destroys its soil destroys itself. These were dramatic examples of soil destruction, and I got to thinking how we were doing today.
We are still losing soil today. It's not as obvious to us today as it was during the Dust Bowl 30s, but it's an ongoing crisis because the bottom line is that we are feeding more and more people on fewer and fewer acres. We are literally losing ground.
The naturalist Aldo Leopold warned us that one of the dangers of living away from the land is that we are inclined to think that our breakfast comes from the grocery store or a carton. This got me to wondering how much soil we had to feed our planet. My soil scientist friend Jackie helped me understand this. Imagine for a moment that the Earth is this apple. 75% of the Earth is covered by water. Now half of the dry land on our planet is too hot, too cold, or too dry to produce food for humans. Of this amount, about half is too rocky, steep, or too shallow to produce food. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that there's not much left over. And then what we have left is under pressure from things like urban sprawl and erosion. It takes 500 years to form an inch of soil, something that can be destroyed in a few minutes, and that worries me. Leonardo da Vinci said that we know more about the movement of celestial bodies than about the soil underfoot. I'm guilty as charged, but I'm not going to leave it that way. Join me in the rest of this series to find out what soil really is and what it means to us. Perhaps if we learned more about soil, we'd be better equipped to take care of the planet.